Hey everyone, welcome to another episode from Pro Engineering. This is the JJRC Q60 and I love it. I've had this truck for, I would say, around about a year now, and I don't know what it is, but it is one of my most heavily used vehicles usually when I go on a trip. I think it has to do with its size and the fact that it's unpainted, so I can kind of throw it in a suitcase and not really worry about it. And then I also like the fact that it's a reasonably good performer. And what I wanted to do in this video is walk everybody through some of the minor upgrades that I've done to this vehicle to make it very reliable. The first upgrade that I'm sure you're all aware of is that this truck no longer has its original electronics, but now has a full set of higher-end hobby-grade electronics. Now, the obvious reason for the electronics upgrade is the fact that I did want a fully proportional steering system here, which I've got now, as well as a fully proportional throttle. But it wasn't just the proportional throttle that I wanted. It was a 2-speed gearbox. The gearbox in this vehicle is not designed for any of the JJRC vehicles. This is in fact the same gearbox that you will find for WPL cars, as you can see here. This ended up working out very nicely because, as it turns out, when I went to install the drive shafts, due to this vehicle having a open differential, the pumpkin where the differential is larger than that on the, well, not only the 6-wheel drive version of the WPL, but really on any of them. You can see how much smaller the pumpkin is here versus the one on the JJRC. This meant that the drive shafts that I've got in here would not fit on this truck with the original gearbox since it was slightly longer for the outdrives. I wasn't able to use the one for the center to last differentials, but this is a fairly beefy unit and doesn't have universals, so I felt that this would be more than acceptable, and it has been. I like the 2-speed transmission because it shifts very nicely. Now, there is a variant of this transmission which is metal. This one here is an all-plastic unit, just like the one on the C34, just like the one in Project Lunchbox, and these have been utterly bulletproof to me. They do come with a larger motor, which is very helpful as well. On my transmitter, I'm using this button right here to shift between the different gears. I don't know what gear it is in right now. Let's try and reverse. Okay, so this is in second gear. We'll drop it into first. First gear seems to be fantastic because every time I bring this somewhere where there's dirt or rocks or sand, the children always tend to fill the entire bed with random rubbish, and therefore it needs a little bit more torque to get the truck going. And that's another thing I like about this, is the fact that it has this big bed area. Usually when we go for walks by the house, it ends up getting filled with random litter or rocks or who knows what. And it's just kind of overall a nice little playful truck. Other upgrades that I've done to the truck do include the softer tires from the WPL vehicles. This was very useful because the stock tires were very, very, very stiff, and although performed well on hard surfaces, the open differentials on this truck means that it will get stuck very, very easily. I've had a lot of people tell me, well, you can just super glue the diffs together, and I don't want to do that because most of what I use this truck for does involve hard packed dirt or asphalt, and I like the fact that it has the open differentials. With that said, the truck runs surprisingly well on soft surfaces. There will be some running footage at the end of this video, and I was quite amazed that this thing really does do fairly well despite the fact that it does have open differentials. In terms of detailing, I did want to give the truck a bit of a unique look. I want to go down the path of rusting it out and really making it look worn out and beat up and trashed. But the first thing I wanted to do was get rid of the tampos, and I'm worried that I'll use some kind of a chemical that will damage the plastic. So I haven't gone with acetone yet, but if anybody has any idea how to get these off without any kind of sanding, I don't want to primer the truck. I want to keep it predominantly its original color. Again, this is something that I just want to toss in the car and not worry about it getting scratched because, it can't. I'd love to hear some information on if anybody has pulled these off. But some additional detailing did include just painting the fuel tanks just to give it a slightly different color. Some contrast definitely helped. I do want to paint the wheels, but I did happen to bond these to the tires, and I'm like, oh shoot, I probably should have addressed that before I did that. I did paint the interior. I really, I don't know if you can see it there, it is green. I've seen a lot of these military vehicles in this sand color with green interior, so I figured, hey, why the heck not? I didn't go too insane with it. Like I said, I just wanted to keep this thing simple. So the dash is green, the seat is green, the door panels are green, and I have seen some printed door panels on Thingiverse, which would be kind of cool to put them in this car at some point. One thing I did want to mention as well, this transmission does require some modification to get to fit, and I forgot this, but if you look inside the cabin here, if you can see that little hump, that little shiny spot right there on the floor, that is the top of the motor. The motor does intrude into the cabin, so I made a simple little slot for the motor, and to hide it, I just painted the top of the motor matte black, and that was problem solved. That was the only modification that I had to do to fit the transmission, was to chop out that floorboard, and otherwise it did go in quite easily. Now, it wasn't the only cutting I did to the truck overall. As I'm sure you're aware, anybody that has this vehicle knows that it does come with headlights. That's never enough for M-Pro engineering. In an earlier video, we did see the taillight set that we made for this truck. This is fantastic because I do have the little trailer hitch now, and I've got these little taillights, and I really kind of like the look of it quite a lot. But the truck did have these little molded lights right here. What I did, and I'll go ahead and shut the truck off so you can actually see it, very, very easily, I went ahead and took a razor blade and cut down from the top to get rid of the little protrusion that used to be here, which represented the turn signal. And then when that had a little flat face, I left a little ledge. You can kind of see it right there. It's not entirely flat. When it was just a flat face with the ledge, I put a drill point right here and just drilled straight into it with a 3mm bit and stuffed a orange 3mm LED in there. You can see it from the bottom. I put a little bit of liquid electric tape just to prevent any kind of light bleed. So very, very simple modification. I think it helped with the overall appearance of the vehicle. The ESC is one of those 30 amp 1/16 scale units, and that brings me to something else very important. People ask me all the time, well, can I have links to these components that you're using? And I really wish I could give them to you, but unfortunately the sellers on eBay are always changing. There is no set name for these, and they can be kind of hard to recommend because I've had some of these ESCs that they've turned on and they've just gone in a puff of smoke. Whereas the one on this truck here has gone through just miles and miles and miles of excellent operation. It's gone through hot days and a lot of stress, and it's never had any issues. So I hesitate to recommend anything because I simply don't know where you can get a good one or a bad one, or what's going on with these components. They're just so poorly marketed. A basic search, let's say you want the transmission, you can just type in WPL C24 2-speed transmission, and you should be able to find this plastic unit as well. And the same is true for these drive shafts. Really, very little has been done to this truck, and I think that is a testament to what a solid little platform this JJRC Q60 is. Let's go ahead and cut to some footage of this vehicle driving and see how well it does. I have to say again that this truck has been just fantastic. I do have some plans in the future. I'd love to rebuild the differential housings with actual bearings. There is some slop here and there. You can see that there's some slop here on the knuckle. But overall, how can you complain about a vehicle that only costs about 40 bucks? Granted, you're looking at about another $60 in upgrades that have gone into this vehicle, but still, for what this is and the application that I've been using it for, this thing has been just fantastic. If anybody else out there has one of these JJRC vehicles and you have implemented other upgrades from WPL cars, I would love to know what they are. Thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.